This is a tip that I wish that I had figured out with my first baby. There is an ergonomic way to carry your car seat when you are freshly postpartum, and this is not it. I know that that sounds so weird and like it couldn't possibly work, but just hear me out for a second. Let's do another demonstration. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Beth, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys 25 newborn hacks that every first-time mom should know. I had my first baby back in 2021, and just a couple of months later, I found out that I was pregnant with baby number 2. So I am currently in the thick of life with 2 under 2, and I thought while it was still fresh, I would share with you guys some of the different tips and tricks I picked up along the way that made everyday life with a newborn a million times easier. Now, I have a lot of tips to share as well as some demonstrations to get into, so I'm just gonna jump right on into it. Tip number 1, when you are changing your newborn's diaper or your baby's diaper in general, try and use the diaper as the first wipe. This is a tip that I wish that I had figured out with my first baby. I honestly didn't even really figure it out until my second, but it will save you so much money on wipes and save you from having to pull out a million every time you are doing poop diapers, especially if you just take the top part of the diaper and use that to wipe down any of the initial stuff there. You would be surprised at how well these things can do to actually just get a cleaner surface before you actually use wipes to finish the job. One of the ways that I make sure that I'm not making even more of a mess when I do this is when I'm done using the diaper as the first wipe, I'll just tuck it under like this and then finish doing the diaper change, and you guys, I promise you it will save you so many wipes. Next tip is also diaper related, and this is especially helpful for anyone that is expecting a baby boy. If you know you're expecting a baby boy, I'm sure that you have already heard that they often do pee during diaper changes, especially in the newborn stage. And so you don't need a pee-pee teepee, you don't need anything extra. What I would do is just put the new diaper directly under the new diaper and then actually use the top of that for quick cover if I needed it, if he started peeing. The other thing that I have found especially helpful about putting a new diaper directly under the old one before I start changing it is that it kind of keeps the entire area clean in general. Sometimes if you have a blowout, for example, it's easier to just have the second diaper be what gets dirty than have it be the changing mat or the floor or the changing pad, especially if you're out in public. So I find that having that diaper underneath saves me from any additional cleanup or mess, but it is also super helpful if you need to just cover things up while you are changing a baby boy. My next diaper related tip is to have a diaper change station on each floor or level of your house. Now, if you live in a house that doesn't have levels and it's just kind of flat like our house is, because we are currently in a bungalow, I would say to try and have a diaper change station in each section that would be really high traffic for you during the day. With a newborn especially, you end up changing so many diapers during the day, and if you only have one spot in your house that you're constantly having to go back to grab another diaper and the pack of wipes, you're probably going to get pretty annoyed with how many times you have to go and do that. And I have just found that having a zone in the areas that I know I'm going to be spending a lot of time in, and all that it has to be is a couple of extra diapers, a couple extra wipes, and you can kind of refill at the end of the day. It just saves you from all of the back and forth, and especially while you are recovering postpartum. The last thing that you want to be doing is having to go all the way back upstairs to get diapers and wipes and having to go back down the stairs again to change your baby's diaper, when what you really should be doing is just resting. And so I highly recommend having a couple of different diaper changing zones around your house. My next 2 tips are belly button related. Now, some of you may already know this, but some of you may not. And when you bring your baby home from the hospital, or if you're having a home birth or whatever you end up doing, when you cut the umbilical cord, your baby's belly button has to heal from that. And so typically your baby will have a little clip that is attached to the leftover part of the umbilical cord that is still attached to their belly button. And this is not something that you want to remove. You want to just leave it there until it falls off naturally, because that is the safest thing for your baby. Now, what I didn't expect as a first-time mom was how kind of nasty and hard to work around that clip was when it came to dressing my baby and putting diapers on. So when you are putting a diaper on your baby and they still have that belly button clip attached, what you want to do is just fold over the top part of the diaper like this at the waistband to kind of avoid hitting and fully covering that belly button clip. By giving it a little bit more space from the diaper, you'll give it a better opportunity to kind of breathe and recover naturally without having this kind of bumping it and irritating it all the time. Second thing is on the type of bodysuits to dress your baby in at at this point. Both of my newborns spent most of their days just in sleepers at this point in time, but there were times that I did want to get them dressed to go out or something like that, and I was typically pulling a bodysuit like over their head and then over their belly button, and it would kind of tug at the belly button clip. And so I actually had a friend recommend to me using the wrap over style bodysuits, and essentially these have little clips so that you don't actually have to pull anything down over your baby's head. You just lay them flat into this, put their arms in, and then you can wrap over from the front to clip them in. These were so much more comfortable for my newborns. I have found the widest selection of this type of bodysuit at H&M Baby. That's just where I have had the most luck, but if you guys have found them somewhere else, then definitely drop that in the comment section. My next tip is for anyone that plans to breastfeed their baby, and I wish that it was something that I knew before I started my breastfeeding journey. No one told me this until I actually went to a lactation consultant for help, but it is that when you are breastfeeding your baby, you should bring your baby to your breast, not your breast to your baby. I just remember being so desperate to try and figure out how to get breastfeeding to work for my baby and so I would find myself in the weirdest positions during the day, like hunching over, kind of bending my wrist in weird directions just to try and get her to latch, and I ended up experiencing so much just like back pain, neck pain, wrist pain from trying to do this, and I honestly feel like it made breastfeeding even harder because I was unable to relax and actually just like sit back and enjoy the breastfeeding experience. So what I would highly recommend is that you get yourself as comfortable as possible when you are breastfeeding. So whether that looks like a high chair behind you with pillows propped or something underneath like a nursing pillow to prop your baby up, you really want to make sure that you're bringing your baby to you and not yourself down to the baby if you want to avoid any unnecessary pain while you are adjusting to breastfeeding your little one. My next few tips are kind of around scheduling and how to structure your day with a baby in general. Now, there is a lot of information and opinions online about how to kind of schedule life with your newborn and feeding and all of that stuff. And while I love a good schedule and I'll share the general framework that has worked for me, what I would highly recommend is just feeding your baby on demand. Your body and your baby are working together, and so if your baby is needing to eat more often than a schedule that you're trying to follow is actually allowing for, that can be really damaging to your milk supply, and you'll probably have a fussy baby a lot of the time. And so I have just found that what works the best is actually following nature biologically and feeding your baby when you know that they are hungry. That being said, the schedule that has really worked well for me and my newborns, and I've just kind of customized it depending on when my babies typically like to eat, is following the eat, play, sleep rhythm. What I like about eat, play, sleep is that it's less tied to a specific timeline, although it is generally on like a 3-hour rotation, and it is more tied to the way that you actually spend your day with your baby. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but essentially when your baby wakes up from a nap, the goal of this schedule and this framework is that you feed them at the beginning of that wake window, you play with them for the next stretch of time that they're awake, and then after that they go back to sleep again. And then essentially you keep following this rhythm. The general guideline is that a newborn needs to eat around every 3 hours or so, but your baby might be different than this. I found that my second baby particularly liked to eat every 2 hours. So we followed eat, play, sleep, but it was on more of a 2-hour rotation. Whereas with my first baby, we followed eat, play, sleep on a 3-hour rotation almost to a T. What I found really helpful in the first couple of weeks as I was adjusting back into this schedule was actually setting a timer on my phone for the next time that I expected to need to feed my baby. So practically what this looked like with my first baby is I would feed her and then I would set a 3-hour timer because I knew that around that mark was when she would need to eat again. And with my second baby, it was like a 2-hour timer. And you might find that overkill for some people. I'm sure it's easy to just kind of keep track of the time, but I find for myself, especially in the early days of having a newborn, I'm always like, okay, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12, when does that put the next feeding? And so just having something that I could check on my phone to know how much time was left before I would approximately need to feed again, I just found that that was really helpful for me to kind of keep track of where I was in the day. My next tip around scheduling with your newborn is to start looking into wake windows by age. Essentially, a wake window is from the first moment that your baby wakes up all the way down to the moment that they go back to their next nap. Now, what you will discover is that a newborn's wake windows are actually very, very short, and you may find that you actually need to be waking your baby up sometimes to eat because they are just so sleepy in the first little bit of their life. Naturally, as your baby gets older, their wake windows will change and they'll be able to stay awake for a little bit longer. And so to get a general understanding of what that looks like and what I should be aiming for when it comes to wake time during the day, I referenced a lot of the content from Taking Care of Babies and Baby Sleep Doctor on Instagram. They both post a lot of great content around wake windows and kind of what to expect at each stage. And so if that's not something that you have a general understanding of, I would highly recommend just brushing up on it a little bit, because I find that it just gives you a better understanding of how to structure your day with your baby. My next tip is something that I tried to do with my babies kind of as I progressed in my recovery from birth, and it was actually to try and get my babies outside for the first little bit of their wake window to help with day and night confusion. Now, for the first 6 to 8 weeks, your babies will not know the difference between day and night, and it's not really possible to just have them figure that out by bringing them outside right when they wake up. But what it does do is help to start kind of bring that association with being awake and seeing light in those moments versus going to sleep and having dark in some of those moments. I didn't really introduce darkness around naps until after the 6 to 8 week mark, but I did always try and get my babies outside to get a little bit of light around them, not only for the sleep benefits, but also just for the fact that it is good for babies to get some fresh air. I think at the end of the day, just getting a little bit of sunlight in your baby's wake window can be super helpful for them and for you. This next tip is kind of scheduling related, but more so just to help you keep track of everything as a new mom, and it is to download the Huckleberry app. One thing that you may not know, and I did not know as a first-time mom, is that after you have your baby, your care provider, whether that is family doctor, nurse, OB, midwife, and kind of what has happened with them over the course of the day. So some things that they may ask you are how many wet diapers you've seen, how many poop diapers you've seen, how long they're typically feeding for, what side they're feeding on. And for me, I just remember, especially after my first birth in hospital and the nurse came in and asked me all these questions, and I was just like, I don't even know my name right now. Like, I am so tired. I cannot remember the last time my baby ate, peed, whatever. And so what I ended up doing was downloading Huckleberry, because there is a free version of the app and I never ended up needing to pay for it. And what it allowed me to do was record the number of pee diapers that my baby was having, how long each breastfeeding session was, when it happened. When I would go into my follow-up appointments after this point and the doctors were asking me questions, I would essentially just reference the app and have all of the information right there for them. And this just made it really easy for me to stay on top of that in the early stages. And I found that as I kind of progressed and got more comfortable as a mom, it just became more intuitive, and I didn't need to have that extra level of just like tracking. But in the first little bit, it can feel like such a learning curve, and there's already so much that you are trying to just like figure out and wrap your head around. And so if you find that all of that kind of tracking feels overwhelming for you, I would highly recommend an app like Huckleberry. All right, let's talk about tummy time. I do want to share with you guys some of the ways that tummy time can be a little bit more tolerable for newborns, especially. At first, I find that they typically just faceplant and cry, and it feels really sad, especially because people are like, that's how they learn, that's how they figure it out. You do not need to do tummy time in that way. One of the ways that I love to do tummy time with my newborns, especially when they are so fresh and you are working on just forming that attachment with them, is doing tummy time on your own chest, and bonus points if you do it skin to skin as well. I love doing it this way because I find that it's really easy kind of before or after a feeding to just burp your baby and then lift them up onto your chest. This is a really great way that you still give them the opportunity to build that like neck and back strength while being really close to you in the newborn stage as well. Another tummy time tip that sometimes people don't realize is that baby wearing actually does count as tummy time as well. This is another great way to do it because it does just keep your baby very close to you, which is exactly where you want them to be in the newborn stage. And as you recover, it gives you the opportunity to kind of get things done as well. So when you're ready and you feel like you want to have both of your hands to maybe start folding laundry again or prepping some of your own food, I find that this is a really great way to kind of accomplish tummy time while still snuggling my baby as much as I can. My last tip on tummy time is to use your breastfeeding pillow, if you have one, as a prop for tummy time to make it a little bit more tolerable for your baby as well. At some time, I do recommend that you introduce floor time to your baby because this is an opportunity for them to start getting freedom of movement and learning how to use their limbs and all of the different pieces of development that help them kind of progress into eventually rolling over both ways, sitting up. And so when I wanted to do tummy time on the floor, but I felt like my babies just weren't loving it and they were still kind of face planting and getting fussy, I would use the breastfeeding pillow and kind of prop them under their chest with their hands over down in front so that they could actually like lift their heads up with a little bit of support and still work on their arm strength without literally just face planting the entire time. My next tips are all around baby clothing. Now, you've probably already heard the tip that you should definitely prioritize getting pajamas or like sleepers that have a zipper instead of buttons. So if you haven't heard that one, I'm throwing it in as a freebie for you, but in the middle of the night, I can just tell you that you are not gonna wanna try and line all those little buttons up at 3 a.m. Let me tell you that. But another tip that you may not have heard is that if you can get footless clothing, like footless pajamas, footless pants, I find that it is just way better because your baby is going to be growing out of the clothing at a much slower rate than if you choose to get everything footed. Now, I know we want to keep our newborns nice and cozy, and believe me, I live in Canada and I had a baby in October, but I just found that for clothes in general, like especially during the day, it was easier for me to put socks on him than buy a bunch of pants that were footed. We have gone through the footed things so quickly both times. Next tip on baby clothing is to invest in drawer dividers if you can. When you first wash all of your newborn's clothes and you get everything set up and it all looks cute, it's so exciting and fun, but then you start washing it and your baby starts wearing it, and the amount of times that you have to do laundry and have all of these little pieces all over the place, I can tell you that you are not going to want to just be like chucking it into a drawer without any like rhyme or reason, because it is going to be so hard for you to keep track of what things are pajamas versus bodysuits, what things are newborn size versus 0 to 3. And so if you can invest in some sort of drawer divider or like organization system for the types of clothing that you have, the accessories that you have, and also the sizes that you have, you will love yourself for it in the postpartum stage. Next tip is about baby baths. If you're a first-time mom, what you might expect around your baby's first few baths is a very peaceful and relaxing and enjoyable experience, because those are the type of baby bath videos that are uploaded to social media. That was not my experience. Both of my newborns absolutely hated baths in the first stage. I found that they would just scream through it. It was very overwhelming and kind of like stressful for my husband and I. But one of the things that we found very helpful to make the experience a little bit better for our babies was actually taking a washcloth and wetting it with a little bit of warm water and laying that over them while they were having their bath. They're typically not going to be fully submerged the whole time, and they do not like being cold, and so just giving them something to make them a little bit cozier will make the experience of the bath a lot better for them and for you. Let's get into some tips around pumping and bottle feeding. There are a couple of things around breast milk storage specifically that I wish I had known the first time around, and I wish I still had breast milk storage bags to actually demonstrate this for you guys. I've used them all, but I do have this little baggie to kind of give you a little bit of a demonstration. To store this in the most effective way in your freezer to take up the least amount of space possible, one of the things that I found very helpful, and I'm gonna use this table here as a demonstration, is to actually take the bag full of milk and just smooth it over the counter or dining room table or whatever is available to you to kind of remove all of the air from it before you put it into the freezer. After that, I would find a flat surface in my freezer and lay the bag down like this, and then when I would go back in to add my next bag, I would take the bag that had frozen flat and then tilt it up and stack them in a row to take up less space in my freezer than if I had just kind of thrown it in and allowed it to freeze in whatever way, and then just had a bunch of different randomly sized breast milk storage bags in the freezer taking up unnecessary space. I had like over 400 ounces of stored milk in our freezer, and the way that I was able to make it all fit was using this trick of laying flat, freezing, and then stacking upright to minimize the amount of space that the bags were taking up. Next tip, if you are planning on pumping or collecting milk to some degree, is all about the Haka. Now, if you do not plan on using a Haka, you can just skip to the next tip, but for the Haka specifically, I found that there was a way to actually use this that I didn't know of at first. What I was doing at first was just suctioning it and then putting it on like that, but what you want to do to maximize suction is actually fold this top part over and then squeeze and then stick it on. And you will get so much more milk this way if you just suction and place it on. One thing that I will throw in as a disclaimer is that this will increase milk supply. And so if that is not something that you are interested in doing, then maybe just stick with that tip of suctioning and placing it on to catch the milk. But if you do kind of want to get a little bit more off of the other side while your baby is nursing, then I would highly recommend folding it over before you do that. The next thing that you guys need to know is that there is an ergonomic way to carry your car seat when you are freshly postpartum, and this is not it. If you carry your car seat like this, you're gonna end up putting a lot of unnecessary pressure on your pelvic floor and your core. My pelvic PT taught me 2 ways that you can carry your car seat that are better for you while you're recovering. And the first one is to hold it with both of your arms in front of you so that you're using more of your like upper body strength to keep it in place instead of like your core being misbalanced. And an even better way to do this that makes it feel like you're not carrying any weight at all is to hold your car seat and actually wrap your arm in and around through and grab onto the little base that's at the bottom for whatever whatever reason, this honestly makes the car seat feel weightless, and I think it's because you're balancing most of the weight of it on your hip. This will make carrying your car seat in and out of appointments and anywhere else that you need to go in that early postpartum stage so much easier while still allowing your body to recover. My next tip is for your baby's tiny little fingernails. One thing that I did not expect as a first-time mom was how fast my baby's fingernails would grow. I think it's just the hormones that are still in their body when they first come out, but their nails grow really, really fast. And I found that my babies would always have their hands curled, or they would just be kind of moving around. And so the easiest way for me to comfortably clip their nails while they were not moving around and just to make it safer for them was to always plan to do it while they were asleep. Lucky for you, your newborn will be sleeping a lot in the first little bit. And so even just like once a week while your baby is sleeping, plan to cut their nails then, and it will be so much less scary for you than trying to do it while they're awake. This next tip is going to sound so weird, and I'm sure some of you are gonna think I'm crazy for it. I don't know if this is legit or if this is just something that my mom did with my sister and I, and so my sister and I did with our babies, but just hear me out for a second. With both of my babies, I wanted the option for them to take a pacifier for nighttime sleep. If you are in the same boat and you want your baby to take a soother, but you find that they are just spitting out every single brand that you offer to them, one of the things that my mom taught me and I did with my baby was actually taking my hand and making it almost like a C like this, and just gently kind of cupping the soother around my baby's mouth up to their cheeks like this, because it kind of just like simulates a boob a little bit. I know that that sounds so weird and like it couldn't possibly work, but for whatever reason, it did work like a charm. And you do not need to be like forcing your hand. You don't need to be like pushing the soother into your baby's mouth. That is not what I'm saying. All you need to do is just gently hold the soother there and just lightly rest your hand on your baby's cheeks. And if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, you didn't hear it from me. Next tip is all about cradle cap. Now, if you've never heard of cradle cap before, essentially it is what happens when dry skin kind of forms over an area where there is excess oil production, and a lot of newborns get this on their scalps, around their eyebrows, just places where hair would be growing. There is nothing wrong with cradle cap. It is not itchy for your baby. It is not harmful for them or painful for them, but for some people, they do just want to reduce the appearance of that, and that is totally okay. What I found worked really well for us is actually putting an oil on my baby's head like an hour before bath time, and typically coconut oil is the best experience in terms of smell and treatment and things like that, but I have also used olive oil when I did not have coconut oil on hand. And essentially you let the oil sit for 1 hour before bath time, and then when you give your newborn a bath, you'll shampoo as normal and then take a really fine tooth comb and just kind of gently lift at the spot where the cradle cap is. You do not want to be scraping. Keep in mind that your baby does have a soft spot here, so you want to be really gentle with this process, but the fine tooth comb will just kind of lift that skin off really nicely, and if it doesn't, that's totally fine. You can try again with the next bath, and over time I think you'll find that this will be a really nice and gentle way for you to just stay on top of cradle cap treatment. All right, we are at my last 2 tips, and it is all about baby gas. My first baby was not very gassy, and so I didn't even really need to do anything other than the bicycle trick here and there with her legs, but as I mentioned, my second baby did have reflux. He was very gassy, and so I did need to get a little bit more creative in managing that. So let's do another demonstration. One thing that I found super helpful with my gassy baby, and I discovered it purely out of desperation, was sitting him up on my legs like this when I was resting on the couch or on a chair or on my bed, and honestly just moving my legs back and forth like this with him seated upright on my thighs. This is literally all that I would do, is just move back and forth like this. And what I ended up realizing is that with gassy babies, what you really want to do is just create movement in general for their stomachs. You're trying to get some of that air that's trapped in them out, and so the bicycle trick is not the only way that you can do that. You can actually really comfortably still sit with them and be creating that movement that will help them to release some of that gas and just get them a little bit more comfortable. Because I've had a very gassy baby, I know that sometimes movement is not the only thing that helps, and so my next tip around gas is to have the products on hand that will make your baby a lot more comfortable, and those products are gripe water and the BioGaia probiotic. These are both over-the-counter products that you should be able to find at most drugstores or even like a Walmart or a Target near you, and these were things that we would just always have on hand even when when traveling because it made his life so much easier, and it was just nice to be able to have an option for him that we knew could help his belly when that extra movement wouldn't do the trick. Well, that is all of the tips that I have for you guys when it comes to newborns and making this stage of life a little bit easier for you guys to transition into. If you are expecting a newborn, I am so excited for you. I know that there is so much information that you are probably taking in right now, and you're probably feeling a little bit overwhelmed about it all and excited as well, but I can promise you that this is one of the most incredible things that you will ever do. You are going to be an amazing mom, and you and your baby will figure it out as you go. If you guys are expecting, I would love for you guys to share your due months in the comment section so you can connect with some other moms that watch my channel. And I do have a lot of content on pregnancy, on birth, on newborn life, so I would highly recommend that you check out some of my other videos as well. And if you are a mom that has been through the newborn stage before and you are a veteran, I would love for you to share some of the things that worked well for you during this stage. I know that I did not hit on all of them in this video. There's got to be some other tips out there, and I'm sure an expecting mom would love to hear them. But until my next video, I love you guys, I'm praying for you guys, and I will see you soon.